Alright, you ready? Alright, so first off, we're going to go back here. We're going to talk about, this is the heart of the whole system back here. Okay, so what you've got back here is you've got your storage tank. It's about 550 gallons of capacity here. And the way it works, right now I have this sump pump pulled out because I'm switching out the line. I had just a hose and I'm replacing it with a hard line. So the way it works is the sump pump feeds into the inlet here, and it pushes 20 psi through the filter. You can get a shot of the filter down there. Through the filter into the pump, right? And this is a booster pump. It takes it from 20 psi up to 140 psi, and it's activated by a pressure switch. So that little box right there is the pressure switch. If you open up the case, on top of the pressure switch, you see there's two posts here with screws and nuts on them. These are to adjust the on and off pressures, the switch. So it changes the off switch and the on switch. So, and it's all fed by this box right here. So this box has an on-off switch for safety. I have it shut off right now because I have some open valves and stuff out there. But when it's on, you can just leave it on, and it'll just keep maintaining pressure. So,
have you set the switch pressure yet?
Yeah, it's all set. So it's all
set on how much psi?
Yeah. So what it does, it pushes 140 psi into the tank. Now, I'm going to get to that in just a second. Now the booster tank, or the booster pump, the way it goes, the PVC is the inlet to the pump, and then the booster pump pushes the pressure through here. There's a check valve right here to keep the pressure in the tank from backing into the pump. This is a pressure relief valve that's set at 150 psi, which is the maximum working capacity of this tank. So it will not exceed the maximum pressure of this tank. If it's 150 psi, it's just going to pop the relief valve and dump back into the tank. So it's a fail state. So if something happens, the switch gets shorted out, something like that, just keeps running, it's just going to pump back into the tank. Coming in the morning and find water in the tank instead of out in the lab. So check valve, pressure relief valve, pressure switch is teed off from the line right here. So it's picking up the amount of pressure that's in the tank. Now, up here you have pressure gauge. So right now it's off, so it's just sitting at like 52 psi. It's just residual pressure in the tank. If you want to bleed it off, this valve right there will bleed out the air in here. So you have to keep in mind that this isn't completely full of water. This has an air bubble. And the way it works is as water pumps in here, it compresses the air bubble, and that's what applies to your pressure. That's hydrostatic pressure feeding your line. You have a main shutoff valve right down there. Now that'll shut off everything going out. And then you go into a pressure regulator, and that regulates it down to 125 psi. Now the range that this is set at, it kicks on at 135 psi. The pressure switch kicks on at 135 psi, shuts off at 140. So it's always moving above that 125 mark. So you should have a constant pressure at 125 psi. Now, the trick to this is you have 125 psi going out at a certain flow rate. So if you're doing less than, say, 15 gallons per minute, it'll maintain 125 psi. But if you're throwing out like 20, 30, 40 gallons per minute, the pressure that you can maintain is a little bit lower. So it's on a little bit of a curve. And that has to do with the pump. Now, if later on down the road you want to upgrade that, all you need is a bigger pump and a bigger tank. And with those two things, you can push 125 psi all day long at 100 gallons per minute, or however long you want to build this thing. So it really depends on how much you want to do and what you want to do with it. Right now this is set up 125 psi for certain tests. Most of the tests you're running at like 30 psi, stuff like that. So this will have no problem handling, 80 gallons per minute at 40 psi, no problem. So that's how all the supply lines are fed. Now, you notice the drain line comes back in here. All the drains drain into this main drain line. So this is a closed loop system. Water comes through the filter, out the pump, pressure tank gets pressurized, goes out into the lab, used for whatever purpose it needs, comes back into the drain line, drains back into the tank, everything's good. Now tomorrow when we continue this video, you'll see the sump pump in here working, and the way that works, I'm almost done with it, just have to fix the hard line. So, and we'll go back out here.